I've done so many of these today, and I can't wait to talk to a live human after this. Hey friends, it's your good friend Tim Campbell-Smith, and today we are going to talk about I'm not going to say all of, but a lot of the things that could be affecting your mental health. My actual hope after this video today is that you see we can't just medicate our way out of problems, or we can't just talk therapy our way out of all problems. There are so many different things that could affect our mental health, and I think this video is more just about expanding our horizons and considering mental health story from a bunch of different perspectives. This way, we don't try to obsess or attribute our mental health concerns to just one thing. We can consider many different things. Before we go too far, make sure you like and subscribe for all things mental health, photography, business, and life. So let's start here. On one hand, there's this model in psychology that gets used a lot in a lot of different areas, and that's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which talks about human needs at length and that there are different levels, and all of them can affect your mental health and your mental well-being. So things like basic physiological needs, food, shelter, but then safety, and then there's belonging, there's esteem, there's a bunch of different things. That's one way that we can look at it. Let's talk about a bunch of different factors or areas that could affect mental health. Let's start with things that came before you and may have come from places without your consciousness or maybe happening without your awareness. And that's your biology.
Actually, if you want to get real specific, it would be your biochemistry, but you know what I'm talking about.
First, there are genetic factors. There are large bodies of research that show that if a parent or a grandparent, usually within 2 generations, experienced mental health adversities, trauma, illness, any other concerns or diseases, that our offspring are more likely to experience that and suffer from it as well. We also might look at brain health because, and as we've discussed in previous videos, your brain is an organ, just like your lungs are an organ and your stomach is an organ and your colon and your bowels are an organ. And there are different things you can do to make your organs as happy and healthy as possible. But things happen that alter their function and maybe affect us in not great ways. And that can happen for our mental health as well, when things happen to our brain. Then there's also like a physical health component. What you put into your body, what your body is exposed to, and the environments that your body exists within can affect your mental health as well. For example, if you live in parts of the world where there's not as much sunlight, that can suppress the production of certain hormones and chemicals in your body that help regulate and maintain mental health. Likewise, a lack of stable housing, if you're experiencing homelessness, near homelessness, even fear of homelessness, that can affect your physical health, which can affect our mental health if we're constantly anxious, nervous, worried, right? You're flooding your body with high levels of cortisol on way too regular a basis, and we know that that has serious mental health effects. Likewise, if you're ingesting, consuming, or otherwise there are certain drugs or alcohol or other substances going into your body, that may also affect your mental health. The example with alcohol is to think about what happens when you're hungover. A hangover is kind of a reversal of everything that happened when you were intoxicated. And the opposite. So those senses of euphoria may become anxiety and depression, where we're anxious, we're nervous, we might be a little depressed, and feeling sad when we're hungover. That's how those substances can affect our mental health. So it's not always things that we're consciously aware of. There are biological and biochemical factors affecting our mental health. Likewise, my next category of things that can affect our mental health, frankly, is life. Which sounds hilarious, but I'm actually referring to the lifespan and events that happen over the lifespan of a human. It's part of the human experience. But life can happen and can affect our mental health. First, let's start with early childhood experiences, adverse experiences, and trauma. There's a reason that so many therapists and mental health professionals look to our childhood, that we work through what we experienced in our childhood because it shows up later in life. I once heard a joke that adults kind of navigate life just trying to get the love that they never got in their childhood. And as much as that's a joke and a blatant stereotype, there's also a sliver of truth to that. And the truth is that we have to look to our childhood experiences. Speaking of, I just want to address the word trauma really quickly. The base definition of trauma is any adverse experience for an individual that causes a lasting emotional impact. This is a wildly individualistic and individual definition. What may be traumatic to me may not be traumatic to you, but everyone has their own definition, and their own definition is fair and sacred and valid. So anything that affects us, anything that happens to us in our childhood that negatively affects us and has a lasting emotional impact is trauma. And trauma can definitely affect our mental health in a lot of different ways, and our biology. The other big life thing that can happen, and something that happens in the lifespan, is change. Simply the concept of change. The act of going to kindergarten. The act of getting your first period. Getting your period. Coming out as queer, or the concept of just imagining coming out as queer. Those changes can be huge and daunting and impose stress and a lot of other effects on us that can affect our mental health. And that's just life. That's life and all the things that happen throughout the lifespan. Next, major institutions. Now, institution, is kind of a high-level, abstract, theoretical, frankly, academic word. I'm usually referring to big places or big things and groups of people that affect our mental health. So, some examples. School. Think about if you have any negative memories from school. Everybody's got different memories of school. Or the workplace. Work is an institution. School and work are the two biggest institutions that are going to affect everybody. School, think about like if you don't belong, if you don't feel like you belong, how you form friend groups can really affect your mental health in that moment and in that situation and throughout life. In the workplace, if we don't make friends there, if we don't advance, if we don't have satisfaction, if we have troublesome bosses, that can affect our mental health as well. Religion and religious leaders can affect our mental health.
Now, I'm not going to touch this with a 10-foot pole, but I'll leave it to you to figure out how religious leaders hurt people.
Government can cause harm, and the perception of government causing harm. The legal system can harm you, and the perception of the legal system can harm you. And I'm going to say this also includes police or perceptions of police. If you think a cop is going to harm you, if you think every cop could pull a gun on you, that is definitely going to affect your mental health, right? And those are institutions, and let's, kind of break that down as well. People can affect our mental health. There's this myth that parents are the biggest drivers of mental health. They're not, but they are people. For better or for worse, parents are a common example of people that affect our mental health. Likewise, an unsupportive group of people can harm our mental health. If you don't have a good support network, friends, family who love and support you, that can affect your mental health. We also might think about people in terms of people who are in positions of power to us, who hold power over us. Power, in terms of people, is the ability to influence others and how easily we can. So an easy example here are bosses, right, in the workplace. We also might think religious leaders, teachers, parents.
If you can't tell, parents are the common theme here and the common problem, but I digress.
What can also do harm to us is money and the concept of money. A lack of it or an excess of it, ironically, can cause mental health concerns. It's usually a lack of money that causes problems. Scarcity makes us nervous, makes us scared, makes us anxious. We get defensive, right? That can affect us. What's one of the most common reasons that couples get divorced? Money. With money also comes the economy, and even just the concept of the economy, the perception of the economy. There's kind of a joke, and I do find it an ironic stereotype that has some basis in truth about millennials and how we can't afford homes. We feel like and we perceive the economy in a way that we think we can't afford homes. And then that affects us because we can't afford homes. So then that affects our housing situations, our physical environment, which can harm our mental health. All of that comes back to the economy. Speaking of, our physical environments can affect our mental health. There's a reason that psychologists are interested in, and we know putting people in solitary confinement in the prison system does a lot of psychological harm, because being isolated and alone and often in a dark, cramped space really does something not cool to your psyche. Likewise, this is why we know, people have serious mental health concerns in war zones. If you're constantly worried that your house is going to be bombed, that is going to do some serious harm in your brain. Your physical environment can cause harm and can impact your mental health. Next, our mental health supports. Mainly in that when we do want help, there's not enough there. There's long wait lists, or therapists are expensive, psychiatrists are hard to reach. And I covered this in another video, which I'll link, if you're a guy, mental health supports are even harder to access and are sometimes less beneficial than to maybe women or queer individuals. Mental health supports, though, also refers to psychoeducation through life. So talking about mental health in school, talking about it in the workplace, discussing and learning self-care practices. Just like most people have to file their taxes every year, and they might learn a thing or two about taxes as they go through life, so too should we be learning about self-care and having psychoeducation all through life. Just like many of us have learned how to handle a cold, how to handle a flu, when to go to a doctor, we're not always good at knowing when our mental health isn't doing great, and we need more psychoeducation supports. Finally, technology, for a few different reasons. One, blue light. Most light that gets emanated from technology and from screens, like the one that I'm reading off of from my script here, emanates what we call blue light. So there's actually, technically, even if it looks white, there's a bit of a blue hue to it. And that can affect the development or and production and use of melatonin in the brain, which affects how we sleep. And sleep has deep connections to our mental health. But also, let's go with the obvious one that people love to talk about, a constant barrage of bad news or scarcity from our technology, from news, from social media, can dramatically affect our mental health. Then, to add insult to injury, and I think this is the cherry on top of the cake when it comes to technology affecting our mental health, disconnecting from technology can have a serious mental health effect. Because we live in such an interconnected world and time and culture where it's about how easily you are connected to other people, how quickly you can connect to people and information, disconnecting kind of goes against our human roots of how pack-like humans are as animals. We are disconnecting from others, and disconnecting from others comes to our social relationships, and that can harm our mental health as well. As you can see, there's a lot of different things that can be affecting your mental health, and it's not always just one thing or another. It's usually a combination. This is why we have to consider multiple perspectives in mental health. For example, a doctor may prescribe anti-anxiety medications for a person of color until the cows come home. But if that person is constantly scared that police officers who roam our streets are going to shoot them down every minute, that mental health solution is not in medication, it's in the justice system. Likewise, you may be happy living your best life, but if a religious leader is telling you that your existence is a problem, is a sin, is a violation, is unnatural, talk therapy alone is not going to help you with that. You may have to change your environment, the person, or how you interact with them. That comes down more to social aspects of mental health. My hope for you here is that you look at mental health from multiple perspectives and see that there could be a lot of things affecting us. I think the question then becomes, what may be harming me? And what do I need to change so that that harm no longer happens? What do I need to live my happiest, healthiest life? And be open to the possibilities. It may not just be one factor. Comment and let me know. What are your thoughts on this? What else could be affecting people's mental health? As always, make sure to like and subscribe for all things mental health, photography, career, and life. Otherwise, we'll chat soon. Bye for now.